All righty, everybody. Can you guys hear me okay? Can everybody hear the microphone? Wave at me. Okay. It's not echoing or anything wacky, is it? All right. We're sounding good. Hi, Zoom folks out there on the interspace. Anyways, okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Bilingual ESL Directors Quarterly Meeting. Thank you for your patience as we kind of gave some grace time for folks with all the crazy traffic this morning. And we are recording our session and be able to send that out. We're just going to introduce our team real quick. If you want to come up as well. And then where did Mirna go? Did we lose her? All right. Here she comes. All right. Yay, Mirna, come in. So first of all, my name is Carlene Thomas. I'm an ESL and migrant consultant from Region 10, of course. And next is Enrique.
Hi, I'm Enrique Jolay, and I'm a bilingual ESL consultant.
I'm Cynthia Jared, and I'm a bilingual ESL consultant.
Leanne Valerio.
All right. Yeah, totally.
And I work with, you know me, most of you, right? Now I'm working with our digital learning, development of ELL resources, and primarily our focus right now has been in EduGence.
All right. And then shout out over there. All right, thank you. So that's our team, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm just going to give us a brief overview of the day and what all we're going to be covering today. If my clicker will work. Hold on. There we go. All right. So just briefly our agenda, we're going to start with our federal updates. We've got some state updates with LPAC, end of the year responsibilities, TELPAS, and some accountability things. And then just our local updates, we're going to talk to you about a bunch of events coming up. We're about to hit end of school year and summer and all that fun stuff. So we got a lot of things going on. Our goal is to finish up with early with a lot of our material that we're going to be talking about today. And then after we talk through that material, we're going to have some networking time and just some time for us here to do some small group topics. And for those of you who are Zooming, you know, we can, if you have other questions or topics, please send those through the chat and we can answer those questions. And for those of you here, I wanted to tell you now what those topics are going to be, really taking from mostly our responses from the Responser Service survey we sent out. We're embedding a lot of that into the session and we'll be able to answer a lot of your questions. So as we go through the information today, we won't take a ton of questions during that time because we'll have that networking time to ask and answer a lot of questions. And we're going to split ourselves into 4 groups at that time. Any folks that want to talk about LPAC, end of the year, all that kind of fun stuff, program evaluations, yada, yada, yada. I also have had some questions about PPCD students and identification. We can talk about those things in there. ELL accountability, Enrique will run a group of that. Bilingual and ESL summer school and anything related to DL programs would be Mirna. And then Cynthia is going to run a group basically planning and getting your input for things that you'd like to see here at Region 10 going into next year, online courses, face-to-face courses, services and resources that you want to see. She's going to lead a group on that. What we'll probably do, depending on our time, is rotate those groups a couple times at least so that you get to at least 2, hopefully 3 of those 4. Okay, we'll kind of manage our time once we get there. All right, so you can kind of choose which group you want to go during those times. So I want to give you that as a heads up. And then also noting that this afternoon, we didn't want to have a formal meeting. We know everyone has their heads down right now. That's why we have a light crowd. Everyone has their heads down, working in with testing. It's a really heavy season right now, so I'm not going to hold a formal meeting. However, several of us from the Bilingual ESL team will be here after lunch from 1:30 to 3:30. We're just going to remain in this room, and we're going to do it as a kind of a working session, extended question and answers from this morning's session. And then also, if you want to sit down and get some help writing a program manual or how a template for your program evaluation, or any other kind of questions that you have related to anything, LPAC, instructional systems, PD, accountability, any questions or work that you want done, or if you just want a place to sit and do your work, we'll leave you alone. You can stay in here and work with us. We won't tell anybody you're still here. Yeah. So just, it'll be a working space this afternoon. So just that's how we're going to work that. All right. And so now, did I hit 2 slides? Yeah. Oh, please. And then we're going to have Cynthia come up for federal update.
Before we start, just making sure that you have the right PDF or PowerPoint. If you can re-download, because there have been some updates that occurred after 4:30 yesterday. We talked to Performance Division, especially in the accountability area. So please make sure if you can log into the Bilingual ESL Exchange under resources and download that PowerPoint. That will be the most up-to-date PowerPoint to make sure that you are looking at what we are seeing here on the screen, okay?
And now I have the honor of presenting on ESSA. Myra Skraybeck and Amber Lassane are at TEA at this moment, getting updated information. So as soon as they get that information, they'll share it. And I have provided their contact information just in case you have questions after this overview. Okay, so there's going to be some new schedules for the applications, and I'm going to click on the needs assessment here, LAA needs assessment. And one of the things is, this is just an example. The actual application has not been developed, but we'll get you that information as soon as we receive it. And we know that this is going to be a new experience, so Region 10 is hosting a series of trainings, and the link is provided for you as well. And as you can see, Amber Lassane has worked very hard to ensure that you have the support that you need. Another update, and it's not really an update, but just want to stress that the federal funds are to be used as supplant and should be used as supplemental, but not supplant. So it stays the same. And then also, one of the things with ESSA is that there's a lot of wording in terms of evidence-based. You'll get more information, but in the meantime, we provided some links. One of the effective tools is What Works Clearinghouse, and if you click on it, you'll find different evidence-based strategies and programs for ELLs, and then the National Center for Education Research. A lot of the evidence-based wording will be in professional development, and then providing a language instruction education program. This is similar to what we do with the LPACs. The only difference is the goals have to be specific for our ELLs. And again, there's no form yet. Myra and Amber are getting that information today. Another piece that's changing is just the wording. Instead of parent involvement, there's going to be parent, family, and community engagement, but the activities pretty much are the same. The difference is we're going to weave in the family and the community. One of the things with the language instructional education program, it has to be evidence-based. It's got to have effective strategies. And one other piece is going to be that you have to measure the outcomes. There's going to be a tracking piece where for 4 years after the students are no longer in a Title III program, you're going to have to monitor the success. And there's no state level guidance to date, but just wanted to give you the heads up on that. And then funds may be used to provide PD for preschool programs. And that's no change. It's just worded differently in policy. Yes, Jennifer? Needs assessment? Yes. Yes. And then finally, these are deadlines that Amber wanted me to share with you. And as you can see, they're subject to change. This is all fluid. But again, just wanted to give you the heads up. All right. Again, Amber and Myra will be in contact with you. There will be trainings to share more information as they receive it.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for providing those federal updates for us. And again, if you have those really specific questions, like Amber Lassane is the right person to ask. And I think as well, we'll add a slide to the very end to make sure you have her contact information. So we'll add that in. Anything changes, we've made a couple changes already to the PowerPoint this morning. So maybe after the meeting, we'll re-upload a new version of the meeting. So when you go back to the PowerPoint, it will be fully updated with everything. We'll add that contact information so that you can get answers from her directly. And like we said, they're getting a lot of new information right now down in Austin. Things are changing as we speak. All right. So let's talk about our state updates. First of all, we do have some school districts within Region 10 that have been participating in some site visits from TEA. And what we like to really share with that is anytime we are able to go to a site visit, we want to share feedback, some general feedback to you all about what kind of things were they looking for. Because this is good for us to know, right? To do those self-checks and those self-audits. And so anytime that we get to sit in on any of those feedback sessions with TEA and school districts, we want you to kind of know what were they really looking for and what are they emphasizing. And so that's really what this information is here. And so first of all, this section of Chapter 89, Section 1220, was heavily mentioned, okay? And this really is our documentation piece for maintaining appropriate records for our ELLs. And I want to highlight a few things that they were really emphasizing during this time. So first, and this is, Section L here, noticing that all actions impacting the English language learner should be in that student's permanent record file. And so this is definitely, and by the way, I do know this is like PowerPoint 101 not to do. It's way too much information on one slide, but I want you to kind of see it. And of course, you have it as a resource. And that's what I wanted to be here for you. But noting that, I would caution you if you have, LPAC folders in another somewhere else, they should be with the cumulative folders, okay? Many school districts, right, we're going to organize ourselves, we're going to put an additional yellow, green, purple, blue folder, but make sure it's in with that information, okay? And these are the types of things, like I said, we're hearing from TEA. We want to share that with you so you're, can make yourself aware of that. And of course, they've got the whole list of things that they want to see. I do want to mention that assessment information. We did have a question about the assessment information in our responser survey, and that should be maintained as well with that permanent record file again. So make sure that that assessment information, those assessment decisions are within that permanent record file and maintained there. Any accommodations that are provided. One of the questions on that responser survey related to assessment was, what's the extent, if you will, of documentation needed to show, right, that this student, that it was, been used effectively and all those things in the classroom. And so, it doesn't really delineate to us in either of our LPAC decision-making, information or in Chapter 89. They don't give us a word-for-word spell out exactly what all that, documentation needs to look at as far as, your data to support why you chose that. So that would be a local decision on what data are we going to use to determine that this is being used effectively in the classroom. Okay, and so that is just something that you're going to have to decide on locally what extent of that documentation. But we do want to make those data-driven decisions. For those kiddos who are testing right now, so let's send up our prayers real quick, okay? So all those kiddos who are testing right now. But with that assessment, those assessment decisions, all of it has to be documented, put into the permanent record file. And again, as far as how extensive that data is, that's on you as a local, LEA to make that decision as far as what that looks like. And keep in mind, again, even our, LPAC participation decisions and linguistic accommodations decisions form the TA provides us, it is something that you can change, right? You don't even have to use that form. You just have to have the information there. So it is flexible for you to be able to change up that form and use it the way that you want to, as extensively or basically as you need, but make sure that information is there. Another highlight here is TEA has also really stressed the documentation of interventions, right? Particularly, of course, for our beginning and intermediate students, especially in grades 3 and higher. We know that is also part of Chapter 74.4 with our ELPs, okay? So it's really important that we're documenting as well what interventions we're doing throughout the year for those kiddos. So that was also emphasized, what's happening instructionally and making sure that is addressed and that those records are maintained in the permanent file. Yes. Yeah, so for the good question, and for Zoom participants, she's asking how many years. I just was talking to Leanne about this the other day, right? Because there's so many different years for different things. Now, we do, of course, very clearly TELPAS writing samples. Of course, we maintain those for 2 years in the permanent record file. And so as far as the samples go, and Leanne, wasn't our consensus basically the general rule of thumb for the other LPAC documentation is going to be, will you come up and talk about that real quick? And so let me repeat that one more time again, make sure that the Zoom participants, thank you, Leanne, the district Zoom participants heard that. So basically, after a student exits, you would maintain their records for 7 years, because it's 5 years after that monitoring years, which those 2 years of monitoring. So that would be the general rule of thumb. Yes, Jennifer. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. Yes. And what was just mentioned is basically, again, more logistics, but it is a process where, of course, our teachers are hopefully writing on those interventions throughout the year, right? Intervention logs and maybe even portfolios, that kind of information. Of course, they're going to be using that throughout the year. And then you would just add that into the cumulative folder at the end of the year, right? And that is appropriate. Absolutely. Good question. Okay. And I do see a couple dings going off. I think I've got some Zoom questions coming up. When I am finished with this section, I'll take a look at those and then, answer those questions as well. So we will get to your questions as well. The other area that I just wanted to highlight here for you is this section right here. So part 2 here, or number 2 under all of the actions impacting our ELLs. Notice what this statement says. Current documentation as described in paragraph L, okay, paragraph 1 of this subsection shall be forwarded in the same manner as other student records to another school district in which the student enrolls. I wanted to highlight that because, yes, I had a response survey question about, what do we do about school districts that are not sending us the appropriate documentation? The struggle is real, y'all. I know it. I have been there, and I think I probably told you a million times. I felt like a private investigator at times, right? I'm going to T-Rex, I'm going to call, I'm going to fax, I'm going to email, and then I even have sat in school lobbies until I got the documentation I needed. So I know the struggle is real. What I can truly say to you is handle your business, right? And when I say that is what we can control is what we do. So what's really important is that as a school district, as an LEA, it's really important that you make sure if an ELL student leaves you to go to someone else, be responsible for that documentation, right? We can do us, right? So that's really important that as we have an ELL student leave our school district, that we pass on those records in full, those LPAC records. So once they withdraw from us, make sure we're sending that appropriately. Now, if you are having difficulty getting that documentation, and we can talk more extensively in the networking section, we can talk a little bit more extensively about that. There are some corrective measures that we can take. There's even a place in T-Rex that you can report school districts that are not sending documentation. So we can talk about some of those methods as we have some more further discussion. But what I really wanted to caution you about here is to take responsibility for your students' documentation. That's what you can control. And so when you have an ELL student leaving you, it's really necessary that you're mindful of working with those office managers, those those that are on those front lines of sending that documentation, that they're trained to know what LPAC documentation also needs to be sent over through T-Rex, right? Okay. So I'll kind of leave that there. And if we have more questions about that in the networking section, we will. Furthermore, on the TA site visit feedback, I really wanted to add this in here because I thought it was really powerful, and I think it's really important for us to convey to our leaders in our school districts. This was directly almost quoted by what the TA gentleman said, that to our program directors and administrators, if you expect it, you have to check it. I loved his quote here. In fact, repeat it after me. Ready, set, go. Or read it with me. Ready, set, go. If you expect it, you have to check it. All right? So what he was really talking about here is, answering these questions to yourself. Are the teachers in my school district supported with what is needed to reach the ELLs in the classroom, right? If I'm expecting it, am I checking that they're being supported? Are training outcomes being monitored and implemented in the classroom, right? So not just, hey, we set up all these great PD sessions for them, right? But what's the follow-up? What's the follow-up? Are my administrators remaining in that training so that they can implement those checks in their walkthroughs and evaluations, right? Are my coaches and those types of positions, are they in those trainings as well, or getting their own supportive training in order to monitor that these things are happening, right? We want to, here at Region 10, we want to be able to support you in more than just a once and done training opportunity. And we're here to support you in that as well. But it is really important that the administrators are on our campuses, the coaches, the instructional specialists, take it upon themselves to make sure that we're putting systems in place to monitor whether the implementation of those learning outcomes are actually taking place. I could have a training all year long about writing language objectives, but if no one ever checks that I'm actually implementing them in the classroom, it is pointless. It was a waste of your time, right? And so I think this is really powerful. If we think about, if you expect it, you have to check it. And he did mention, chunk those trainings, not all at once. Of course, I know that we've got, heavy PD days, beginning of the year, sometimes mid-year, etc. And again, we're here to support you with that. But also, what about that ongoing training in PLCs, right? We can come help facilitate PLCs, or you can implement those own things in your school districts. But making sure that that training is provided as well in a place and time that is ongoing and that it's expected and monitored. So again, just wanted to share with you some of this feedback that we're getting directly from TEA so that you can kind of see what are the things they're looking for. And I really just want to encourage you. We're really getting a sense as of late from TEA that they are really trying to be a partner with school districts. I really felt that in the site visits that we've had and in other interactions with TEA. I just know that we're really seeing, if you will, a shift in mindset and really wanting to be that partner for our school districts in all of our regions, and coming alongside to support. And yes, we have to sometimes notice when there are egregious actions happening or inactions. However, note that TEA, I can see, is really trying to be a partner. Okay, and always note that here at Region 10, we're not regulatory. We're here to support you in your school districts. We're here to make sure you have the information and support you on that. Okay? All righty. So, touching on our bilingual ESL summer school, and like I said, in our networking time, Myrna will have a time that you can ask questions about, curriculum resources or that kind of thing. But this is, again, coming from Chapter 89, 1250. The letter has not yet been posted. Our commissioner's letter has not yet been posted. It usually comes out in April, and mostly at the end of April. I think last year's letter was like April 30th. But I did put a link there to last year's letter so that you can just see it and know. But we're not expecting any major changes coming through for our bilingual ESL summer school. Here's just the highlights, things to keep in mind for summer school. It should be 8 weeks for half day or 120 hours of instruction. And I know we had some questions coming through recently, wondering what other school districts were doing. So if you're wondering what are other school districts doing, make sure you join in with Myrna on that. Also, I'm going to post this afternoon, a message on our Google group to see what other school districts are doing as far as that goes. Because we know if you jump from half day to doing a whole day session, you can add in a lot of other factors such as lunch and things like that. And how does that work in? And so we'll have a discussion going there on the Google group. If you're not yet, by the way, let me not forget to say, if you're not yet in our Google group, you will email me directly at carlene.thomas@region10.org, and I can add you to that Google group with any Google-supported email address where we can just network with one another. Anyway, next, our student-teacher ratio should be 18:1. Another thing to note there, and our summer school is for any ELL identified with parent permission to attend. And that would be for those going into kinder and first. Those kiddos coming into kinder or first. So what's important is, as you're doing those roundups and everything here at the end of the school year, you would go ahead and identify and get that parent permission. But note that enrollment doesn't begin until the next school year, right? So not all LPACing needs to be done now, but that would happen at the next beginning of the next school year, okay? And then remember that the reimbursement is usually around $1,100 per student, okay? So just keep, that's usually, per unit, but that's usually that reimbursement amount. We can't say that's going to be for sure, but there you go. All right, so just a general information coming about bilingual ESL summer school. All right, end of the year considerations, things to think about. We've got our big end of the year, lots of decisions, LPACs that need to happen at the end of the year. Keeping in mind, just showing you what sections of Chapter 89 this information comes from, so you can take a look at that on your own time. Our exit criteria chart, I put the link there for you. Nothing crazy new. It's, nothing is really crazily changed. We've still got, our oral language proficiency test that has to occur that they would have to score fluent on. You can use TELPAS, listening and speaking for advanced high, or the other list of approved tests for OLPTs. Of course, they're going to have to pass in grades, grades 3 through 10. They're going to have to pass that to reading STAR assessment or ESC. And then they're also going to have that writing components, either advanced high writing TELPAS or, one of the other agency approved tests. Norm reference tests, of course, for first and second, and our 11th and 12th graders. So nothing's really changed on that exit criteria. The thing that we do want to note, okay, and I'm going to open this up just to make sure everyone's really clear about, on our linguistic accommodations form, which is on our LPAC resources page, okay, on TEA LPAC resources page, our linguistic accommodations form that you've all already used and put into the folders and everything else, right? Right? Okay. At the bottom, right, this is what we have to be very mindful of this year, is that there are changes on what would exclude a student from being able to exit. If they participated, if they had any documented, I'm trying to get this to enable, there we go. If they had any documented accommodations in these areas. So I'm going to just highlight this information to you here. Let me just kind of get this a little bit larger. Zoom. Let's see. Boop, 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 boop. Oh, that's going to be slow. Okay. That's a little better. All right. So, students for whom, this is the section that we're going to look at right here. Students for whom the LPAC recommends the use of dictionaries. I'm pausing. Now, dictionaries as a designated support. So I'm only talking about grades 3 to 5. So when it mentions dictionaries here, it's not talking about grade levels on the reading and writing assessment who just have allowabilities for dictionary usage. So I'm talking about in grades 3 through 5 who have a designated support use of dictionaries. Okay, so use of dictionaries would be there. In grades 3 through 5, oral administration, and keep in mind, this is all for reading and writing assessments. Oral administration, that would be either the text-to-speech feature online or by the test administrator on a paper version. And then language and vocabulary supports. So we know language and vocabulary supports only come through what? Online version, right? So if they had the language and vocabulary supports, notice it does not mention content supports. And then the last one is extra time. Extra time. If they had documented to use extra time, any of those accommodations, so your third through fifth graders, there's 4 things that could exclude them. If they had those 4 accommodations on assessment, it would exclude them, any of those 4. 6 and up, if they had any of those 3, then that would exclude them from being able to exit. And notice, guys, even if I just documented, I put that little Sally needed extra time, but day of test, like today, she doesn't even take that extra time, or whatever day she takes it, right? Didn't even take that extra time, but we documented that she needed it. So she would still be ineligible to exit even if she meets all exit criteria, okay? So I just wanted to highlight that so we could really see what those areas were and how to find that information when you have those end of the year review LPACs, so that you can keep that in mind. Those things would exclude your ELLs from exiting, okay? And also, by the way, and I can share this with you if you're interested, I have just a basic template that I've used before, just a spreadsheet of how I would go through, right? Usually I would start with writing because that knocks out a bunch of kids, right? So where's my writing? Who meets that criteria? And then did they also get the reading? Did they have the accommodations? Any of those accommodations, that's going to knock them out. So what was their OLPT, right? I get a lot of questions about OLPTs and when to administer, so I'm going to mention that now as well. Keep in mind, of course, we're going to use OLPTs for identification. Do I need any new student to my school? Just every new student to my school. Do I need to give them an OLPT? No, only if they're new to state or country and I'm identifying them, right? If I'm identifying that student new to state or country, then yes, I'm going to administer an OLPT at the beginning of the school year to identify or whenever they enroll. But if they're coming from another Texas district, the identification process should have already been happening, right? And if we get into some exceptions, I know there's a lot of like little what if, what ifs. But in general, are y'all with me, okay? At the end of the year, I get this question a lot. Do I have to give an OLPT to every kiddo at the end of the year? Not necessarily. Yes, can I? Private school as well, right? You would have to identify. That's exactly right, right? Very good. So public, I should say if they're coming from any other public Texas school. Very good. Thank you for letting me not miss to put that in. Now, at the end of the school year, like I said, when I would kind of go through that, going through that process of, here's where they're meeting that exit criteria. You don't necessarily, if you're using, let's say, Woodcock-Munoz and not TELPAS for listening and speaking, okay, or Lost Links or IPT, you're using one of those, you don't necessarily have to give that OLPT to every student at the end of the year. Because you are getting that information from TELPAS. Now, if you just want that information as documentation, and particularly for like maybe your first and second grade kiddos and your kinder kiddos, right? You're just trying to get some data, since additional data, since they don't have the additional testing, you might want to do that for information purposes. But really those kiddos who are up for exit, right? And you're going to use those, you would need to obviously have that OLPT data, but there's not a requirement that you have to give that OLPT at the end of the year for every kiddo. Yes. Yes. Yep. Yes. Yeah, it's like you read my mind, Marie, because I was right headed there, and I'm glad you mentioned it so I didn't forget. Keep in mind, as a district, you need to make that decision. And this should be written into your program manuals, right? What are we going to use that you would update every year? What are we going to use? As a district, we're using TELPAS Advanced High Listening and Speaking for OLPT. Not, well, for little Johnny, we'll use this, and little Susie will use this, I'll just see which one they get fluent on, right? We're not doing that. It needs to be across the board, right? It needs to be across the board. We're using TELPAS, or we're using Woodcock-Munoz, or we're using whatever, okay? But I wanted to really mention that because I get that question a lot about OLPTs. Yeah. 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 Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And for my Zoom participants, they're mentioning, absolutely, you can, as a school district, really use those OLPTs for monitoring progress. She mentioned using them, only in even grade school years. You can set those types of criteria and progress monitoring because it does have good data, but there's not a requirement. And so unless you're using that for your exit criteria, and again, that doesn't mean you'd have to do every kiddo, because guys, we know how laborious that process can be, right? One kiddo at a time. And so you can just do that for, if you will, those kids who are up for exit, maybe met the other criteria, or that you think, that kind of thing. So keep that in mind. Don't forget, we have to send that parent notification of progress. Parent notification of progress at the end of the year. Notifying parents of our students' ELL progress and what the recommendation is from the LPAC for next year. Continuing in the program, of course, for our exits, getting that parent notification back, exit monitor year 2, whatever it is, okay? All right. I think I left the clicker over here. All right. Last but not least, just want to make sure I throw this back in there about the update for next year, for next school year, the PEAMS HLS Home Language Survey data. There will be a change. And so make sure you're working with your PEAMS personnel to make sure you're in, they're aware, of course, with all their PEAMS training and things, but that you're working together about that. Basically, we're going from just noting one language to separating the information on the students, the home language, and then the student's language. So this will be two new indicators. So instead of just the one, what is that home language, we're going to get the home language and the student's language. And we'll get more information on this as we hear more and see more. And I'll be sending out here in a few weeks. I'm trying to give you guys some time to get through testing before I send out this information. But I'll be sending out a little more information specifically about HLS change. No. Yeah. No, you would still put that date of exit as the LPAC, right? The LPAC's enter date. Yeah, so I would. Yeah, I think that's going to be kind of a local kind of issue that needs to be corrected. Yeah, because you would need to have that with that LPAC end of the year. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Exactly, right. We typically will put that last date of school from that school year that they exit, exactly, to make sure that that service runs through the end of that school year. So you can just, it would be every kiddo then that exits would have that same date. Yes. The, so I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear your entire question. A few people. Right, right, right. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. As long as it's kind of right after that school year. Yes. Sure. That's perfectly fine as well. Again, as long as it's still within that school year. I'm sorry, Renee. Oh, yes. So basically, guys, if you're having your LPAC, a week after school, that kind of thing, after school ends, you can have that date as your exit date and that kind of thing. So it does not have to be, it can be that time. The thing it just cannot be, I think you cannot have it at the beginning of the next school year. We can only exit at the end of the school year. And of course, with our allowances that the because even guys, with the guidance that we've received from TEA, we're still making the LPAC exit decisions at the end of the school year. Even though we're receiving scores mid-year, the decision is made at the end of the school year. There is no decision to be made. You're just, in the summer, you're just carrying out the decisions of the LPAC when the scores have come in. We're not LPACing in the middle of the school year or middle of the summer to make a decision. The decision was made at the end of the school year. Now, if that end of the school year, right, might be right there at the very tail end. Okay. All right. I'm going to leave it there, and we can have more discussions during our networking time. And I just have a couple things about TELPAS before we get into accountability. Yeah. Okay. I think that I would hold off on answering just because, like I said, they're down, learning right now. And I think those things are subject to change. He's talking about the 2 versus 4 years of monitoring with ESSA. And I think we're still, right, things are still, they're really actually in a session, Myra and Amber, in a session today, getting some more specific information. So I would hesitate to answer on that one yet. Yes, Marie. No. Yeah, you won't go back. You won't go back. It will just, it's not retroactive. This will be moving forward in next school year. Yes. So you do not have to, what her question was, do I have to go back and change it? No. This will be moving forward from this point. Uh-huh. Right. Yep. Right, exactly. So currently it's just like she said, not pulling from both of those fields, but it will be starting next school year. Okay? Yeah. Right. I'm trying to figure out what you're saying, I guess, when it comes to, um, right. But because they're enrolling next school year, yes, they would need to have that information updated next school year. They have to have both fields next school year. Yes. Okay. All right. Tell Pass a couple things before Enrique comes up. Where are we on time, by the way? Are we good? Okay. Maybe should we want to do a break before you come, or do you want to just keep rolling? Okay. All right. Couple things about TellPass real quickly. For our TellPass window, just want to mention, don't forget, March 6th through April 5th is our assessment window. We're still finishing that up. I added this information in here because I've gotten this question quite a lot about newly enrolled students who are enrolling during this time. So I want to just kind of read this statement and make sure we're very clear on this. So when you get a newly enrolled ELL, and this comes from page T4 in our DCCM, holistically rated domains, an ELL from another Texas school, district, state, or country who enrolls on or after the first day of the TellPass testing window, so again, March 6th, will not be assessed by the receiving district in the holistically rated domains. However, a newly enrolled ELL in grades 2 through 12 is required to take TellPass reading test. So if they're enrolling in that March 6th or after, in that window, you would still administer their reading assessment. Okay, so I want to make sure I make that clear. I received this question quite a bit. April 6th through 7th is our TellPass data verification window, and then April 28th is when we should receive TellPass standard and additional reports. Okay, so just want to make sure you had that info. And then let's go ahead and, do you want to just keep rolling? Are we good to keep rolling, guys, or do y'all need a break? Okay, let's keep rolling a little bit. I want to get through accountability, and then we'll take a short break right after that. Okay, Enrique.
Right, perfect. Good morning. So I'm going to talk about coding SciFi students and unschooled ISLE refugee students, and also remind you about years in U.S. schools, because those three different things that we are going to submit via TellPass will make a difference in terms of how your districts are going to be accountable this 16-17 school year. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about these three things and the importance, and then when we talk about ELL accountability, we're going to make those connections. Okay, right? Everything's about connection. So we're going to start by again reminding you on the school asylees, refugees. Is this working? I feel like it's not working, but can y'all hear me? Yes? All right, perfect. Anyways, unschooled asylees, refugees, and SciFi students. Where do we code them? Where do we submit that? In TELPAS, right? So sometimes I get questions from districts about, well, what if we just rely on what it's in PIMS? But we are going to talk about TELPAS, we're going to talk about PIMS and how the asylees, refugees are coded in each of those systems, okay? And that will be something that will be taken into account when we talk about the index 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? And remember that for unschooled asylees, refugees, we have a certain criteria, right? LEP, the I-94, and there's no I-94, some documentation that we're gonna get that documentation later, and things like that, right? In the other form that we have under EduGens, or actually, if you don't have EduGens in your district, we have that form available in our bilingual resources. In the same situation for SciFi students, it's called students with interrupted formal education. We have the definition there, and we have to have that documentation kept every single year. It's not that 1 year works and then we're just going to code them every time until the 6th year. It's every single year it has to be revised, okay? So that's the number one thing that I wanted to mention. We're getting lots of questions about these two coding situations under TELPAS. And also remember that when you talk about asylee refugees status for PIMS, and this is taken from the PIMS data standards, I believe it's element 1076 if you want to look it up. Element 1076 defines asylee refugee status that applies only to students whose initial enrollment was in a school in the United States in between grade 7 through 12th grade, okay? As a school asylee or refugee. Sorry. Oh, okay, it's closer. All right, so here is the situation. It does not apply to students whose initial enrollment in a school in the United States was in a grade lower than grade 7, okay? So that is why it's very crucial that within during that TELPAS data collection, we are coding our students K-12 pretty much correctly, especially 212 or 312, because those are going to be the ones who are going to impact our accountability system this year, the 16-17. I'm talking about 16-17. Beyond that, we have another set of rules, okay? So I'm just talking about 16-17. So anyways, so that's why TELPAS has to be very accurate as far as number of years in U.S. schools, especially for those grades that are testing grades, 312, okay? So, and that's what this slide is talking about. We have to code those students and of course keep that documentation every single year that we are submitting that those students qualify for the criteria under unschooled asylees refugees. Okay, and this is the way you will find it in the DCCM, and for unschooled asylees is 1 for yes, of course blank or 0, not applicable, and for SciFi students the same situation, 1 for yes and 0 for not applicable. So yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can. Well, yes, you could be a SciF student if you're, let's say you're, and right, yes, yes, yes. Just wanted to clarify. That, okay, all right. All right, so the question was if you are coming the first year, or you are in the first year in the US schools, if you can be a SciF student, and the answer is yes, you can be a SciF student. If you qualify under state criteria and you have enough documentation that that student qualify for that status. And again, this is, again, crucial. We have to code years in UF schools correctly. Every year, I have some phone calls panicking, especially in May, when there's a window to correct that, right? What happens if we don't code years in your schools correctly? Let's say that you have a student that is new to the country, should have been coded 1, but for some reason, well, he enrolled in 5th grade and he was coded 5. ELL progress measure will be, if applicable, right, for that student, if he takes the, and we are going to talk about that in a little bit, when you take the test in English, if he qualifies for that ELL progress measure, and then if you put 5, he won't. So it affects many different, not just that. You're gonna talk about PBMAS in that conversation when you are correcting years in US schools. So it's different accountability systems that years in US schools is used for. So that's what is very crucial. So what happens if during this year you detected in your internal audit, or you were checking or spot checking, and you found out that 1 school or 2 schools were coding students not even using the 60 days rule, right? Because that's what we have to take into account also. So please call us. So we will work with you. We will talk to Pearson. There is a procedure that you will have to go through. We already did that in the past, so that's what I'm sharing that with you. But that should not be the norm, because that's a procedure that is completely out of what we are discussing and what the state wants us to do. So, and remember, every time a school district calls there, it's not good that you were coding students, incorrectly. And if it happens 2 years in a row, it's a little bit, it's a red flag. It's a very red flag. It's a very red flag. All right, so just for you to think about this, we have to consider that 60 days rule. We still are having questions about how we apply that 60 days rule. If you are not clear on how to apply that 60 days rule, right? We have this flow chart that we developed for the 15-16, and it applies still for the 16-17, right? And it's pretty clear. It's pretty straightforward. You just follow that flow chart and you will know how to consider that 60 days rule when coding years US schools, or when you are reviewing your data collection for this year or past years, and you detect some issues that were done in the past. Yes, ma'am. Correct, yes. And that actually, thank you, Diana. That leads me to this chart that I skipped unintentionally. So first school year has been enrolled in US schools for all or part of 1 school year, okay? Starting grade 1, okay? So we start grade 1. If you have a student that is enrolled in 6th grade, is new to the country in 6th grade, he will be 1 year. If he's in kindergarten or pre-K, it does not count, or it's not included in that count, okay? So it will be 0, 0, if you want to call it that way. And again, we have our famous ELL progress measure, right? ELL progress measure. Remember that you have to qualify for ELL progress measure. Sometimes I have some questions about why don't you see I cannot see ELL progress measure in my Spanish version, in my Spanish star, because Spanish, the ELL progress measure doesn't apply to Spanish versions, right? So we have to be very clear when we communicate this to our principals, to a central office, and people that are looking at the ELL progress measure, especially when it comes to time when you are forecasting your results as far as the accountability per index, okay? So we have to have a valid star scale score, number 1, has to be LEP number 2 and cannot be LEP denial. That's the number 1 question that I have. If my student's an LEP, why he does? I mean, he qualifies for everything, and but he doesn't have any ELL progress measure. He was reporting a STAR progress measure, the regular STAR progress measure. Well, is he a denial? Yes. So that's why he doesn't qualify for ELL progress measure. Okay. This is an N. Okay. So you have to meet all the criteria. Then the student took an English language version of a general STAR assessment. And here, that's what I put here, does not include STAR alternate or Spanish version of STAR, okay? In the past, when we had a STAR L, it didn't include a STAR L either. And of course, the student has not exceeded the number of years in the plan for which he or she qualifies. And that's why years in US schools is crucial again. Because if you code a student 6, when he's 6 years in US schools, in 6th grade, when he's a newly arrived student, he would have qualified probably with a 4-year plan, depending on how it works with TELPAS and the number of years in US schools. But now, because he exceeded those 4 or 5 in the event that he's a SIFI or a school as a leave refugee, then he won't have an ELL progress measure. And the question that we have is, we have a newcomer, and he took the test in English, right? An ESL newcomer that he took the test in English, and he's not been reporting an ELL progress measure. He's been reporting a student progress, STAR progress measure, the regular one. And the answer, and then we look at the different factors, and we find out the number of years in US schools should have been 1 instead of 6 in 6th grade. Does that make sense? It happens. I know it sounds unfamiliar to you maybe because you're very thorough but in your district, but it happens. I get several calls about why this student or this set of students are not being reported with that ELL progress measure. I cannot see it. And then what I do is, all right, let's look at the pattern again, right? Let's go look at 3rd, 4th, 5th, and that's cool. All right, let's get 3 students per grade level. Let's download the data and see how they were coded, and I manually run that criteria, and that's how I end up finding those situations or issues, I call them issues, right? Or areas for improvement for that specific school. And then what happens is we'll go to another school that happened, and then you find a trend in the district, and that's how you find out that there's like maybe 500 students that were coded incorrectly. And then we'll call procedure, right? We call Pearson because you have to somehow correct that in the appropriate window, which is usually between May 10 and May 20 was last year. I think it's just 10 days for TELPAS data correction. And then they have to manually rerun an ELL. It's 2 different processes that you have to go through. That's why it is very critical to code students correctly because it affects this. And remember, the ELL progress measure is issued once. So it's when they run all these processes at TA or when those results are reported, when they see the indicator from Spanish to English, right, 1st year, and of course, the student qualifies under the rest of the criteria. That's when that process of ELL progress measure is run. And then that plan will stick with that student until he exceeds that plan. So if you coded incorrectly that student, then you have to rerun. And that is not an automatic process. You have to call Pearson. We have to correct the number of years in the school. Then we have to ask them to rerun the ELL progress measure to hold that student accountable to the expectation as of the current ELL progress measure or the correct progress. Yes, ma'am. You had a question? Yeah. No? Okay. Perfect. I thought you were raising your hand. All right. Perfect. Any questions about the ELL progress measure? All right. Okay. Perfect. They're having fun in the other room. So remember that the majority of the plans that you will find in your district are going to range between 1 to 4 years, except if the student has been coded what? SIFE or unschooled asylee refugee. And where did we find that? Where do we find that? TELPAS, right? That's why coding TELPAS correctly is important, because that is the factor that is going to make a difference between the student in the student account and in the district accountability per index, especially index 1, 2, and 3. It will make a difference when they meet that ELL progress measure expectation for his number of years in U.S. schools within that plan or not. Meaning either you have a point or you won't per student, right? So anyways, so that's why it's very important to code those students correctly. Again, it's also only around the first time an eligible ELL takes a STAR test in English, okay? And we have two factors. The factor number 1 is number of years in U.S. schools, and TELPAS composite, not just reading, the composite proficiency level, okay? And we consider the first TELPAS administration starting 2014, grade 2 and higher, okay? All right. Do we do a break? Do you want a break now before we start with the very dense situation? All right, because this is gonna be a little bit, you know, it's always, I always think, well, it's gonna be really fast, but it ends up not being fast. Because there's so many situations, right? So many factors. All right, so we're gonna have a 10 minutes break. It's 10:30 almost, 10:40 we reconvene here. Thank you very much for attending our session, and we will continue in a little bit with ELL accountability for the 16-17 school year.
Hello, everybody. All right, we're going to come back in from our break. Hopefully, Zoom participants are able to relax for a minute. And everybody here, I wanted to say two things. First of all, a clarification. I'm getting this question on the Zoom, and I'm going to have to update my answer as well because I did receive some more clarification about this. You know, when we were talking earlier about our cumulative files and our LPAC files, right? And how I mentioned they need to be together, right? We have a lot of questions surrounding what about when they're digitized, right? A lot of school districts are going to digital files. Basically, the rule of thumb to remember is they have to be together. They have to be married. They have to be together. So, and there's another side to this as well. So I want you to remember two things. I want you to remember, number 1, they have to be married. What do they have to be? Married, okay? They have to be together. So if my school district does cumulative files that are digitized, then I also need to have those LPAC files digitized with them in those same folders or however they're housed, okay? But also our recommendation to you as well at Region 10 is the second thing I want you to remember is to print and place. Say it with me, print and place. Print those suckers out, the LPAC information, and keep them in a hard copy file. As well, whether your school district does a cumulative hard copy or a digital copy, print and copy. Because if TEA was to come to your school district, they are going to ask for hard copy files. And if you're over there trying to print for 1 million hours and you can't provide that, right? You see what I'm saying? So 2 things. Number 1, cumulative file and LPAC files have to be married. They have to be together. And then number 2, print and place. Always, if you have digital files, you know, through some of our great systems like Edugence and such, print and place those information in the files. So I wanted to make sure I said that. Also, guys, and this is for our Zoom participants as well as our folks here, a lot of people are having trouble finding the PowerPoint. So I do want to show you. When you go to the Region 10 website, go to Programs, search under here, service areas, go to teaching and learning services, bilingual ESL ELPS, or bilingual ESL, excuse me. And it's here actually under the overview. Keep scrolling down and it says bilingual ESL exchange. And this is where you'll find that. You'll need to log in to view this resource, but that's where you'll find the PowerPoint. You'll scroll down to March 2017, okay? So again, Region 10 website, when you get to our bilingual ESL page, it's on the overview tab. I want to make sure and bring that up because I've had several emails and questions about where to find that. All right, Enrique, back to it. Okay, we're going to continue.
The 16-17 ELL accountability. What I'm going to talk about today is being taken from the last TTN that we had with TEA. Probably you downloaded that from the website, but if you didn't, I have included those charts per index. Because remember, this is last year that we're going to have the index system. The following year, 17-18, we have what? The A through F accountability system. And those rules, some of them are going to be similar, some others will change drastically, but what we're going to discuss today applies to the 16-17. I just want to mention that framework before we start talking about especially descriptors, right? Descriptors in STAR. Let's talk about the first STAR performance level descriptors. I think this chart is very explanatory as far as what is proposed and what we're going to use this year. Before we get into the index, which will use a different terminology, we're going to contact TEA to see why they did not use the spring 2017 terminology in the chart, but that'll be later. Because I'm just saying that because you will have that question in your minds when I'm presenting index 1 through index 4. So, but I want to caution you that you'll have to use this translation, if you want to call it that way, to understand this year's results in terms of the accountability charts that I'm going to show you later. The first part is the satisfactory standard this year, which is, comparable to the level 2, right, the bare minimum. It's going to be the approaches grade level. Still passing, but approaching grade level. So under TAIs, we want every student to be higher than the approaching grade level because that's a bare minimum. But it's still passing, right? Does that make, well, it does not make sense, but maybe in your mind you're thinking why that is not meeting a standard, because they decided that this year it's going to be called approaching or approaches grade level. The student is on track to meet what we want them to meet at a certain grade level. So that is the satisfactory standard. For EO, this is 3 through 8. For EOC, for these state assessments, what was referred in the old days, I'm gonna call it that way, last year, level 2 satisfactory academic performance, now again it's gonna be called approaches grade level. And for STAR All2, what was called satisfactory standard, this year will be reported as, again, level 2 satisfactory academic performance. So that's the chart that you'll have to use to kind of understand that, yes. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, Diana. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The idea is that, yes, it's the bare minimum to be passing for accountability and exit purposes and everything, but correct. That means that we are on track. And the idea is when we see the post-secondary readiness, that's what we want every student to be at. And that's why when you look at the next slide, you see post-secondary readiness standard meets grade level. If you want to make a comparison, because we didn't have that last year, right? That terminology, that's why you have NA there. That would be comparable to final level 2 recommended if you want to, if you're thinking about comparing what happened last year and what is going to happen this year. But you can see that in the post-secondary rating standard for EOCs, right? Last year, it was final level 2, satisfactory academic performance, final level 2, final level 2 recommended, right? That meets grade level. So that's where we want all students to be at, right? Every single year. But if they are here, they're still, they're still gonna be counted as 1 point, depending on the index criteria, okay? So, but for post-secondary rating standard, STAR L2, we have pretty much the same terminology. Yes, ma'am. Correct, yes. And you will see that in the next slide, but you will not see it with approaching grade level. You will see it with the old terminology. Does that make sense? All right. Any questions? And we have a third one, which is the level 3, the advanced standard for 3 through 8. Now we call it masters. Master's grade level, okay? So we're going to call them the master grade level. So for EOCs, it's the same terminology. If you refer back to the fall 2016, you will find that that was the old level 3. And advanced standard for STAR L2, it will be reported as accomplished academic performance. So now that we have our terminology a little bit clearer than before, we're gonna go back to the old terminology to be able to see how our ELLs are going to be included this year. And this will be in the manual. Again, where are we gonna find our different indices? Appendix I, inclusion of ELLs, right? So you will find this charts there when the accountability manual has been released probably during April. We have index 1, student achievement, right? If you have a student that is new to the country and or in his first year of enrollment, it's not included, okay? But if it's is taking STAR alternate 2, and it's held accountable for that satisfactory standard. If we have students in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year, here is the situation you have to look into. Spanish, if he took the test in Spanish, it's going to be held accountable for that satisfactory standard. If he took the test in English, we're going to be looking at the ELL progress measure that he qualified a while back, or he is qualifying for the first time the year that he's taking the test. Does that make sense? All right. So if he met the expectation set in that ELL progress measure assigned, then he will count as 1 point for that index 1 as passing, even though you know that the ELL progress measure is under the satisfactory standard. But he still is the school is still going to be rewarded for assessing the student in English and making progress from one expectation to the other, right? Does that make sense? Because remember, a plan let's say a 4-year plan has 4 different expectations. Expectation 1 will be, let's say, 20 questions. Expectation 2 will be 22 questions. Expectation 3 will be 24 questions or 25 questions, of course, with the scale score that will be assigned for those number of questions, right? Because it's not measured by number of questions, it's measured by scale score. And the expectation 4 will be that level 2 that we understand as satisfactory standard. So if a student, and this question, I think someone asked me during the recess, I was gonna say, during the break, what happens if a student tested in English in 3rd grade and for some reason tested in Spanish 4th grade and he's going back to English in 5th grade? Now, he was issued the ELL progress measure probably when he was in 3rd grade, if he qualified. The year he took it in Spanish in 4th grade, the ELL progress measure was already created. It doesn't apply to the year that he took in Spanish. He will be held accountable for satisfactory standard right here. But the following year, he's going to be in year 3, not in year 2. So we're not skipping. We're still counting, even though he took the test in a different language. All right. I know. We will have to edit this recording, right? All right. So that answers one of the questions that we had in the past. What happens if they change versions constantly, right? During the ELL progress measure. Do we skip 1 year? Do we still count? Yes, we still count. And the system will still count, right? It will come with the ELL progress measure with actually in that specific scenario that I just described, will count year 1, year 2, year 3, right? So expect those situations. And if, of course, the student had only 3 years in the plan, then will be year 1, ELL progress measure. Year 2, took in Spanish, satisfactory standard will be the accountable level. And year 3 will meet level 2, satisfactory standard. So he will be pretty much at the end of his progress measure when he takes the test again in English. Does that clear a little bit how it works, progress measure? Yep. All right, perfect. All right. Do you have any questions that no? All right. Okay, yeah. During the breakout sessions, I can even, graph it and kind of, create a visual to better understand how students are held accountable for the ELL progress measure throughout the years in the plan. Okay, and when they exceed those number of years in the plan, then immediately the STAR progress measure kicks back in. Does that make sense? And that's why it's important to code them correctly, especially those number of years in your schools, because that's what is going to be used to place that student within that plan already issued once. All right, perfect. Now index 2. First year, not included, except if the student is taking STAR alternate 2. It's going to be, he's going to be assigned a student progress measure. Second, third, and fourth, it says here student progress measure, but that doesn't mean the STAR progress measure. When you see from now on in a manual that says student progress measure, when you talk about ELLs that qualify for an ELL progress measure, you can be talking about an ELL progress measure if you're referring to that set of students. But they have come up with the generic term, if you want to call it that way, student progress measure, whether it's STAR progress measure or ELL progress measure, if applicable for that LEP. Because remember, if it's an LEP denial, does he have progress measure? ELL progress measure? No, but has a STAR progress measure. And that is under, again, student progress measure. All right. So, second through fourth year in US schools, you have, bless you, you have everybody held accountable to something, either a STAR or ELL progress measure. In this situation, in the 5th year or more, everybody is going to be held accountable to the STAR progress measure, unless there is one situation when a student will still have an ELL progress measure in that 5th year. Who can tell me that? Come on, you can tell me. We said that. If the student is coded, thank you very much, asylee, unschooled asylee, refugee, or SIFE. So that's why we have to have our list of students that should match what the state is going to be reporting later, right? So anyways, because that will impact this. When can we correct any situation during TELPAS window for corrections, which is usually in May, before all this is run, right? Once this is run, then you have to appeal that and all that, but the window already closed, so they're gonna say no. And still, it will remain with the incorrect number of years in your schools, all your state accountability, federal accountability, and your PBMAS, okay? So anyways, any questions so far? So see the importance now, SIFE, unschooled asylees, refugees, and number of years in US schools, right? Everything is here somehow included. Index 3. Let's talk about Index 3. First year, the same situation, not included, except if you're taking a STAR L2, you are satisfactory standard and advanced standard. Second through fourth year of enrollment, you have Spanish and English. For Spanish, satisfactory standard, remember that level 2 and level 3, which is like, you know, taking any regular student, a non-regular student taking the test in English. They're held accountable for that, okay? So they're treated as regular students taking a test in English. Or if the student took the test in English and he qualifies for ELL progress measure, or he's still within that ELL progress measure, we're going to use that ELL progress measure as our base for 1 point, and our post-secondary readiness standard for our extra point for that Index 3. So you get 2 points for students that met that post-secondary readiness standard, right? Which should be close to that final 2 recommended. You know, every year changes, so we don't know. So for those students, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, that's going to be the accountability situation, okay? For parent denials, or for students that exceed the ELL progress measure plan as of number of years in US schools, then they're going to be held accountable as any other student with satisfactory standard. That, remember what was the satisfactory standard? Translates this year? It translates into approaches grade level, right? And that advanced standard, which translates into masters, right? Master's grade level this year. Perfect. And again, STAR L2 test is pretty much the same situation as far as accountability for Index 3 for LEP students that qualify to take that test. Fifth year or more of enrollment in US schools, then you have the same rule for everybody as any other student taking the test in English. Satisfactory standard, right? Or approaching grade level, or approaches grade level, and advanced standard, which is master's grade level, okay? Yeah, I have the same question. Why didn't they include that here? I have the same question. That's what you were wondering. All right. Index 4. Yay. First year, not included again, and STAR L2. So if you see first year in US schools across indices, it's kind of similar, right? Pretty much identical, most of the case. 2nd, 3rd, and 4th is the difference. If you have ELLs receiving bilingual education or ESL instructional services, and you have here the parent denials, right? Like the other charts. If the student took the test in Spanish, then they're going to be held accountable for that post-secondary readiness standard, and only for Spanish tests on any subject. Same rule. 2 or more subjects, right? Remember that? 2 or more subjects, you get a point. And this, again, is comparable to that final 2 recommended level, right? That they had to have in 2 subjects or more, in the different rules that what happens if he took 2 subjects, it has to be 1 subject. I mean, that will be in detail. You will find that in detail in the 2017 accountability manual. They will be released in 1 month. And then if the student took the test in English, and remember, not tested on any Spanish versions, will not be included. That is one of the major questions that we have as far as Index 4. What happens if Juan took the test in Spanish in 1 subject, and in the other 2 he took it in English? Will he be included? And he's in his 3rd year. What does the rule say? Not tested on any Spanish versions. Was he tested in any Spanish version? Yes, he was tested in reading. He tested reading in Spanish. So then he will be included. Does that make sense? So it has to be all or nothing. All tests that were submitted with the code, you know, S, I believe, right? Scoreable, right? Under that unique ID per student has to be the same test language version. If the computer finds out that one of those is different than the other, then he'll be, of course, second, third, and fourth will be immediately accounted for that index 4, if applicable. Okay, so anyways, the only ones that are not included, again, are the second, third, and fourth year that are LEP, that take all tests in English and are receiving bilingual education services or ESL services. Parent denials, they're not. They're not within that rule. They will be included and held accountable for that post-secondary readiness standard. Whereas in STAR AL2, we're gonna go with the satisfactory standard, which translates into approaches grade level. All right. And the post-secondary readiness standard, we go back to the chart. What was that? What was that? Do you remember? Yes, no? The post-secondary readiness standard meets grade level, right? The meets grade level. Meets grade level. No, that meets grade level. If you go back to the chart, the post-secondary readiness standards meets grade level. The advanced is the one that you have under masters. Okay. So we have approaches meets masters. Again, everybody, approaches meets masters. 3 different descriptors that we will find under STAR test. All right, so for 5th year or more, post-secondary readiness standard will be the bar for pretty much all students in order to be included in that index 4. Yes, ma'am. Yes, and that's why I was referring to this specific, situation where students, when they take a test version, the test version is English, but one of those is Spanish. Well, not really, because that is, remember, and this is LPAC part of what Carly probably. I'm sure she presented, the decisions are per subject. So we don't decide based on accountability. We decide based on the subject and what is best for the student under the state criteria. Now, if the best for the student is to take reading in Spanish, math in English, and science in English, that is what he's going, and that if that's what the LPAC decided and everything signed, and everything is okay, then that is what's going to go into the accountability, and we're going to apply these rules to be accountable for index 4. Does that make sense? So that doesn't mean that now we're all going to test everybody in English, so they are not. No. I don't want to come across that way. It's never my intention, because remember, we have to go by the criteria for LPAC, for the test, the decision making that we have to do every year per subject, following the criteria found in the manual, right? Usually page 12, but I don't know if it's page 12 anymore. But Carly can tell you which page is that in the decision making manual. All right, what happened with my clicker? Do you have a question? Okay, yeah, it's per subject, but remember, this is just the rules are going to be applied to those decisions. Does that make sense? So we don't want to play with the. All right, something happened with my clicker. All right, perfect. Thank you very much. And in the breakout sessions, we can discuss on some situations that are particular to your district, as far as SIFI and school asylees refugees, number of years in U.S. schools, ELL progress measures, things that are particular. Maybe you have a campus that had a high number of LEPs that were asylees refugees, that were newcomers, things like that. I can help you with that. And also the procedure that we have to follow if we have any issues with the coding. All right? Okay, perfect.
All right. Okay, thanks, Enrique. Can I have the clicker? Don't walk away. Don't walk away. All right, let's see. Maybe the battery is going crazy. All right, guys. So, oh, no, it's fine. I'll just come right over here. No worries. So a couple updates that I want to share with you guys. Yeah, it's working again. The age-old trick of turning it off and turning it back on, right? Always works. All right. So a couple updates of events and things we're having here locally. Hopefully you've seen my emails about some of our big OLPT stuff that's happening. I'm really excited about April 6th. If you've not yet registered, I really encourage you to go on right now and register. Dr. Criselda Alvarado is coming, who, you know, is one of the writers of Wilcox Munoz, to talk about their new Wilcox Munoz 3. So on August 6th, there's 2 sessions, an AM and a PM session, and it's the same thing, okay? She'll be repeating the information twice. That way we could get in more participants. This has also gone out to our dyslexia listservs and our special ed listservs, so make sure you really get in there and register if you do want to attend to hear more about that. Keep in mind, this is a change. This training with her is not a test administrator training. This is more intended for folks in positions like yourself, you know, school administrators and things who are looking at this product, okay? It's not for test administrator training. Our rep is coming, their rep is coming on April 26th in the afternoon to do actual test administrator training. So if you're looking to send folks who need to be trained on how to administer the test, they need to attend on April 26th. April 6th is when Dr. Criselda Alvarado will just be speaking about the new product and the new changes for Wilcox Munoz 3. Okay, so interesting. Also with OLPTs, we've also got IPT and Lost Links also coming. And you can see the dates and times there. So be sure to check those out if you are needing these are test administrator training. So to learn how to, or refresher on how to do the test. Mirna, do you want to come up and talk about the Dual Language Summit coming up? April 6th. We have not planned to Zoom it, but we could. Yeah. Why not? I'll do it. There you go. Thanks for asking.
All right. I just wanted to let y'all know that the Dual Language Summit, the North Texas Dual Language Summit, is open and ready for registration. We announced it last time, but we have just now opened it up. That link that's on there will take you to the webpage that has all of the sessions already posted and their descriptions and who will be presenting and kind of a schedule of the day. So that if you want to see, you know, what sessions you're interested in attending, it's all there for you. Also, there's a link to the registration on that website as well. So if you just want to send that out to your teachers, it has a link to show that, you know, that takes them straight to the registration. There will be a limit of 100 participants. The location holds 100 participants, so it's the first 100 that register. There's also very clear information on parking. So make sure that your teachers read the parking information. There is one lot that they have assigned that have told us that they will not be receiving any type of tickets if they park there. If they don't park in lot U or by the park, that's free parking, they could get a ticket. So we don't want them to get a ticket for attending a conference. So make sure they follow the parking. There's a whole page on parking on there that has a map and it shows them exactly where they can park. Yeah, we cannot refund tickets, non-refundable. But we do have an array of sessions. We think that there is lots of different targets that we're hitting. We are trying to also address the affective side of working with students in dual language programs. We know that we have that linguistic and cognitive, but that affective sometimes it gets left off in the shuffle. We don't focus on it as much as we should. And so that's what our panel's going to be about. The day will start off with a panel, and then there will be breakout sessions. The sessions will include how to teach math and science in both Spanish and English. They can go to the Spanish session. They can go to the English session. There's also SPED and dual language. What are our students that are dually coded? How do we work with them? Our GT and ELLs, and dual language. We have technology in the dual language classroom. So there's lots of different sessions that you can attend, and we would love to have y'all there. So if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Oh, no, that's perfect. Really excited about the Dual Language Summit. It's been great. And man, that SMU campus is beautiful. Yeah. It is all day. The question was, is it all day? It is. And again, for those Zoom participants, Myrna just mentioned lunch will be on their own, but there's also a lot of places around the SMU campus they can even just walk to without having to get in the car. All right. Next, our next Bilingual ESL Charter Forum, our last one of the year, is on May 4th. So just keep that in mind and make sure you join in on that. And really, really excited. Come on up, Cynthia, and talk about the Newcomer Refugee Institute.
All right. Really excited about the Newcomer and Refugee Institute. We're going to have breakout sessions, collaborative groupings, guest speakers, and then there's some organizations that have signed up that I didn't even know existed, like Clowns Without Borders. So we may have Clowns Without Borders here. We may have clowns performing. But what they do is it's a ministry for refugees. And then also we'll have student performances. Want to make it engaging, move away from the sit and get, and then also make sure that all of the cultures are represented that we serve here in Region 10. So super excited about that. Please register. Also, the dates for 2017, 2018 have been sent out from, I think Margarita sent them out. So go ahead and register for those as well. Super excited about what's happening. I have already had many organizations RSVP. They want to fully engage and then also facilitate small groups.
Love it. It's going to be so much fun, guys. Lots of interactions this year. Lots of time for you to collaborate with one another and respond to those. So really excited about the Newcomer Refugee Fair. Sign up today. Okay, sorry. All right. Also, another thing that is, should be now open on our calendar of events, is our ELL Secondary Symposium. We're doing it in the summer this time, in the start of summer, on June 16th. As you can see there, on June 16th is going to be our ELL Secondary Symposium. Duncanville ISD in the house, right? They're hosting it for us this year, trying to move a couple things down south so that some of our southern districts can get to some of our conference type stuff a little bit easier. So thank you, Duncanville ISD, for hosting. Keep in mind, this is another limited seating. We're just going to hold about 90 folks in their boardroom, so which is good. We really wanted to keep it small as well so that we can do a lot of interaction. Basically, with the ELL Symposium, we're going to start with a classroom simulation in a secondary ELL lesson, and that I do in my made-up language. It's a lot of fun. So we're going to start the day with that to kind of get our minds juicy, if you will. And really, the whole day is going to be what we're calling meetups and maker spaces. It's going to be a working session. This ELL Secondary Symposium is not necessarily for, directors and things like that. We really want this to focus in on secondary classroom teachers to come in, a lot of elbow grease, bring their laptops. We're going to be working, we're going to be creating, we're going to be making. So really solicit your secondary content teachers. We want them there. We want them to know this is going to be a working session. They're going to be able to collaborate with folks. We're going to have some of our content specialists there. We're going to have some of our technology specialists there to help facilitate some of those conversations, how to sit down and actually embed, technology, how to embed these practices in their work. And it's going to be a working session. So we need teachers there, teachers that want to learn how to reach their ELLs in the secondary classroom. So make sure they get there. It'll be a lot of fun. All right. Don't forget, also save the date, our Bilingual ESL Summer Conference that we've had yearly. What year is this of our summer conference? How many years? 13? Something like that. I think it's the 13th annual. I'm not sure. It's going to be at Collin College, the Prestonwood, is it called the Prestonwood campus, right? Up in Frisco on June 30th. We've had some other conferences there as well, DL Summit and things. It's a great location. And I've posted here, guys, please, and we'll send it out via email as well. But go to, and you know what, on this slide, I think the graphic might have cut it off a little. I mean, you can probably still click on it, but in case you're jotting it down, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. In case you're jotting it down, I do think that this graphic kind of got in the way a little bit. So let me just move that over. Okay. There we go. That way, if you're jotting it down, you can see it fully. But go to that link, guys. It's a responser survey. We want to hear from you about what you want to see and how you want things to go. We truly do want to hear from you, not only on just what sessions you want, but also logistics, what you like and don't like about format of the conference and things like that. We want to hear from you and design it around what you would like to see. So please fill out that responser survey and give us your feedback. And again, I'll send that out via email as well. All right. Also, just that's a link to our, our cluster flyer, which is on our Region 10 website. And I'll go ahead and show everybody. So again, when you're on our Bilingual ESL page, our Bilingual ESL page, on the Region 10 website, which I search under programs and under teaching and learning, then you would go to service offerings, and right here at the top, and it's constantly updated. And in fact, I'm sure I've got a couple things I need to send to Margarita right now to add on to it. We're always adding new things for this summer. We've got a lot of ESL prep. We've got sheltered instruction. We've got our classroom simulation stuff. We've got a lot of loss in translation. We've got a lot of different cluster offerings for this summer. So all of that will show up, and we're always adding it. And if you yourself are a district and you're interested in hosting something over the summer, contact us, and we would love to set something up in a district near you. Okay, sorry. All right. And then also, Title III Symposium. Who's already registered? Who's already planning on going in Austin? Okay, July 25th and 26th. I put the link in there so that you can access the link for registering. Great conference. Love being there every year. And so get a lot of information, sessions from different teachers and coordinators and things around our state, all over the state. Regional staff around the states, TEA, there's all kind of different things there. I just want to put this information in there. I did send out an email yesterday about this. I wanted to alert you all. The ESL certification prep course that we currently have online, I'm revamping and relaunching coming soon. So you'll see the dates here. And I've just added this slide. So again, we'll upload the new one to the exchange. But currently enrollment is still open. So anyone who's enrolling right now, that's fine. You've got teachers enrolling. April 30th, I'm closing that enrollment to new enrollees. And anyone at that time who has enrolled will need to complete the course by May 30th. And then we'll have a few day of window where it's completely shut down. And on, as you see, June 5th, it will be relaunched with some updates and some changes, okay? So I just want to kind of let you know that there's going to be about a month where people won't be able to enroll in the course. So if you want them to kind of get that in at the end of the school year, they're going to need to enroll before April 30th, and they'll have until May 30th to complete the course. All right. So heads up on that. Also want to let you know, if you are interested in learning more about writing a program evaluation that I mentioned earlier, we'll host a program evaluation training after our next quarterly meeting on May 2nd. We'll host a program evaluation training. So in the afternoon, instead of as special topics, we'll do a program evaluation training. So if you want more information on how to write a program evaluation, it'll be then. All right. That is going to conclude the information portion of our session today. So Zoom folks, just want you to know that we love you, and we are going to stop our recording.